right. So this is the third video for R and R Studio for computational statistics. And this time, so the first two videos are actually kind of boring because it's all about installation and everything, the interface. So this time we will be dealing more with specifics of the actual data that we need to do. And as far as computational statistics, manipulating of data and data analysis are actually concerned. So for this session, we're going to talk about data frames. So since we're dealing with large amounts of data, so we will be dealing with different data sets. And data sets are usually stored in a special structure called data frame. Okay, so before we do that, we will probably need some sort of data that we will be playing around with. So let's try to run the code data. Okay, when we try to run this code, it will actually show us the different available data sets that are present in R. So after we installed R and R Studio, they're already built-in datasets that we can be able to work with or play around with every time that we want to test certain functions or modules that are available in R. Alright, so let's try to load one of the data. One of the most common data that you most probably will be encountering sa mga susunod yung courses ahead is the very famous IRIS dataset. Alright, so let's try to run the IRIS dataset. So we have our data IRIS. So when we try to run this code, data IRIS, so you can be able to see that on our global environment, it created here an IRIS dataset. But since this is a dataset, it won't be showing here the actual set of data because this is large in terms of values. There are a lot of data for IRIS dataset. So medyo mahirap if it will be displaying all of that on this type of window here on our global environments. Okay, so when we deal also with data, it is very important that you know how to make use of data frame. Okay, so data sets are usually stored in a special structure called a data frame. So this is a data frame is some sort of a variable, pero it is structured. So you have rows and columns already. You're not just dealing with a one-dimensional data because data frames have a two-dimensional structure. So we have rows that corresponds to observational units, meaning these are the actual records that we have. So if you have your information management course, you must have had an idea already about rows and columns for data tables. So in programming, they call it data tables, but in R, in statistical concept, or in data science in general, we usually use the term data frame. So we have rows. Again, we have rows that correspond to observational units, and we have columns that corresponds to the variables or the fields. Okay, so for instance, you want to analyze the what do you call this? The nature of the data, like how many observations that we have. So let's make use of the function str. So if you can see as we type str there, it can actually show different description about str function. So it compactly displays the internal structure. So str stands for the structure of the data. So we want to know the structure of the IRIS dataset. So once we do that, we're going to click run. And there, from the console, you can be able to see that this IRIS dataset has 150 observations of 5 variables. So what does that mean? Meaning meron siyang 5 columns or 5 headers. And we have 150 records of that specific table. Okay, so if you want to know naman the summarized version of the structure of the data, instead of doing the conventional identifying the central measures of central tendencies, like isa-isa mo pa yung mean, median, etc., you can actually make use of the code summary. Okay, so let's try to run summary. So as you can see here on our console, since we have 5 columns according to the data frame, we have 5 variables. So those 5 variables are the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. If you're not familiar with what are those sepal and petals, since we're dealing with iris dataset, let's try to search for the iris dataset. Iris flower. So you can be able to see or visualize how that one actually works. So we have here images. There. So this is an iris flower. Meron siyang iba't ibang species and they actually differ in terms of the petal length, the petal width, and the sepal length and the sepal width. So yun. So may iba't ibang species for iris dataset. Those are the Setosa, versicolor, and virginica. So sa iris dataset, meron tayong 150 observations, 50 observations per species. Okay? So if you want to display, like I want to just see few samples of the data, like I want to see the first few rows, you can actually make use of, let's try to run it here para it won't get deleted. We have your head, then iris. Then let's try to run that code there. So these are the actual records, the actual observations. Pero since we made use of the command head, we're just displaying the first few records of the data. Okay, so ito yung limang yun. So the first, or six rather, the first six are actually Setosa with the following values for their length, width, for their sepals and petals. If you actually want to view, you can also use the command view. Oops, it's case sensitive, so you have to make use of capital letter view iris. So let's try to run this one and see what it would show naman there. So if you want to view naman the entire data set, you just make use of the view command. So para makita mo, hindi ka satisfied with the head or the first six, you want really to examine the data set. So you have there the 150 entries for your iris data set. So since these are already built-in datasets and you want to know more about the dataset, you can just make use of the help command. Well, this is a general command for R. You make use of the question mark and to see some sort of documentation about iris. So there, let's try to run. And it will show you here in our help what is iris dataset. So iris dataset gives the measurement in centimeters of the variables sepal length and width and petal length and width respectively for 50 flowers from each 3 species of the iris flower. So you can make use of, if you've encountered a specific command and you're actually unfamiliar with that command, you can just make use of the question mark, then that command, and it will show you here in the help panel that we have here kung para saan or what does that specific command does. Or even not just command but also datasets or any words or any variables or any keywords that you encounter when you're using R. Okay. Next, if you want to examine or if you want to access an individual variable in data frame, you just make use of the dollar operator. All right. So for instance, you have a data frame of, we haven't created a data frame yet. Let's try to make use of iris, then $sign sepal length. There. So if you run this code, it will show you just the sepal length. It's giving you access just the specific column or variable under that specific data frame. Okay, or you can also make use of the width command. So with iris, which is your data frame, and the column that you will be using. So let's try to run that one. There. So it's either of the two. Like if you want just to select a specific variable or specific column from from a data frame, then you can just make use of those two commands. All right, so that's how we deal with data frames. Then if you were able to select some of the data already, then you can start manipulating the data. So the next video, what we will be doing in the next video is that what if we want to make use of our own data sets? Like you have an Excel file, a CSV file of your own data, and you want to load it in R. How are we going to do that? Okay, so I don't want to create a very long video, so this is it for now. I'll upload the next one for manipulating your or using your own data. Bye.